going to talk to you about the positioning in your thighs in standing poses, but this is going to apply again to any pose where one leg is doing one thing and one leg is doing the other thing, where you have kind of a front and a back, which is more obvious in the scenarios I'm going to use, but sometimes a little less so depending on the pose that you're in. So the first thing that I'd like to show you is what it means to press your thighs back, to kind of get the room that you're trying to attain in your poses without overarching your back and losing the strength in your abdomen. So if you have a block, that's awesome. Let's use that. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. We're going to take our block, if we have it, in between the upper thighs. Okay? I'm going to show you this from the side. I'm going to sit back into this slight chair pose, hands on my thighs. And as I press my sit bones back, I can push my block back in space. Okay? So this is pressing my thighs back in space, which is allowing for a curve in my lower back, which we need to some degree, but this is very exaggerated. Okay? And then when I pull my sit bones or my tailbone down toward the floor and even tuck under, like I'm tucking my tail in, then the block pushes forward. And that's, you need a little bit of that too, for you can feel how strong your lower abdomen is, but you can also feel how your thighs are pushing forward in the hip sockets, which ultimately is kind of strenuous for your hip flexors. So then we're going to play with it. Press the block back, pull the block forward, push your tailbone back, tuck your tailbone under, and then find a neutral space right in between. And then you feel how that kind of turns on your thighs and it turns on the floor of your pelvis and your low abdomen a little bit. Okay? Now stand up nice and tall and let's put that block over to the side. Try to find your balance on your left foot and your right leg. You're going to just pop up onto your toe. And from here, we're going to rotate. This is going to be external rotation, right? Turning out to the right is external. As we rotate the other direction, it's internal rotation. We're rotating inward. Okay, just go back and forth a couple of times on your right leg. Okay, and lower that foot down. Lift onto the toes of your left foot and rotate externally, internally, externally. Notice how you can just swing your leg out and let your pelvis move with it, but you're trying to keep your pelvis still, so there's some amount of engagement in your outer left hip in order to turn your leg out. Some amount of engagement in your inner left thigh to turn your leg in. Come back to center, stand up nice and tall. Spread your legs out, spread your arms out, and your wrists and ankles are about the same width. Now we're going to turn our left heel out a little bit, turn our right foot all the way out, and bend into our front knee for warrior two, where we're going to play with this pose. Now, your arms are kind of irrelevant here. You can leave them out or you can not, but that's not really what we're talking about today. Let's try what we did earlier, where we bent the knee a little bit, and this back leg, we want internal rotation, a little bit more than the front leg. We're bending the front leg so that thigh bone can sit back in the hip crease. Okay, but then we have that issue of overarching our lower back and relaxing our lower abdomen. So we keep that thigh bone back. We push out through that outer foot, and then we send our tailbone a little bit toward the floor, trying to find a happy medium so this thigh bone doesn't feel like it's pushing forward, so that these muscles in your hip crease do not feel like they're straining. Then we're turning toward this front leg, and that one needs a little bit more external rotation, meaning to the right. And you don't want to do that from your knee because that's just going to strain your knee joint. But you can play with opposites. Take a hand on the inside of your thigh and press your leg into your hand. And so you have some power in that inner thigh, and you feel how right now there's a little bit of an attempt for the thigh to turn in. Okay, keep a little bit of that strength, but take your hand to the outside of the thigh. I'll show on the other side as well, and press that thigh and hand together so your whole outer thigh all the way up to your right glutes are engaging. And keep that strength in the outer glutes and try to wrap your outer right hip down toward the floor. Okay, keep this left thigh bone back. Keep a little bit of engagement in the inner right thigh. There's a lot to think about. Inhale, come out of the pose, straighten both legs, make your feet parallel. I'm going to have to turn away from you to show the other side. You are just going to rotate your left leg out and do the same pose second side. So legs wide, arms wide, right heel steps out a little, left leg turns out completely. We're bending our front leg. Bend our back leg, slide that thigh bone back. And then we have this big curve in our low back. So as we stretch that back leg straight, we add a little bit of extra length in the lower back. Okay, and then this front leg, we're going to engage the inner thigh by pushing into our hand. Engage the outer thigh by pushing into our hand. And this engagement here, this outer thigh, is wrapping all the way up to this hip. The hip is turning your leg to point in the direction of your toes. The hip is turning your leg to the left. Okay, so you keep this really powerful. Keep that engaged. Touch your body. Feel that it is engaged. And then you can take your hand onto the inside of your thigh and keep engaging the inner left thigh, the left glutes, and then press through that back foot all the way into the outer edge of your heel. And then we'll inhale and stand up, and please parallel your feet and step your legs all the way together. Thank you for joining.